Based. You know what that is? Cartman buying the theme park all for himself.
About metaphors and similes today because having good metaphors and similes can really make your book pop. We're going through 8 mistakes that writers frequently make with metaphors and similes, but don't worry, I'm gonna give you lots of good examples too. Let's start with number 1, the first thing you think trap. There are some metaphors and similes that come really natural to us because we've heard them 10,000 times. Comparing a heart shattering like broken glass. This is a familiar concept. Or look at this one, eyes sparkling like, you guessed it, diamonds. Or this one's very, very common, right? When someone gets angry, their anger burns like fire. Oh,
True.
Imagine that. Heat, a fire metaphor for anger. So George Orwell calls these dead metaphors because they've been used so frequently that they lose their power. They no longer have the power to surprise us in any way. So we're gonna do a little metaphor test right now. I am going to give you half of the sentence and you're gonna try to complete it and write a metaphor. This is from a real example by Dennis Hamill in
Cold
The
as
Sins
fire
of Two
and
Fathers.
hot as
The
ice.
sentence is, he glanced out the rear window at, and he's looking at traffic. What sort of metaphor would you use to describe that traffic? I'd really encourage you to come up with your own example and leave it in the comments, but we're also going to talk about some options. Now, you could do some sort of animal metaphor, something like the stampede of chrome and steel. You could do some sort of water metaphor.
I always go
the
for
river
water.
Of red tail.
Water is like
or
my
you
go-to.
could even use a kind of dance metaphor, like the
Dang, he
conga
got
line
me.
of cars.
Winding
so none of those
snake
are the
of cars
right answer.
behind
We're
him.
just exploring options. But
Ants
now I'm going to
carrying
tell you
stars.
what Dennis Hamill wrote. He glanced out the rear window at the iron centipede of traffic.
There you go, insect.
I really like that. Comparing a centipede, but making it an iron centipede and comparing that to traffic. I can really visualize that. Now, I will give an exception to this rule. Sometimes you can take a cliche or a metaphor and you can repurpose it and twist it in a way to make it seem fresh and original. Let's look at an example from Richard Powers' Plowing the Dark. So he has a simile that goes, the hours creep like slugs. Now, that feels kind of cliche because slugs are like one of the first things we think of when we think of a metaphor or simile for being slow. But he doesn't stop there. He says, the hours creep like slugs in a headwind. And just that added exaggeration of like slugs in a headwind.
I'm gonna try
makes
that. All
it
right,
feel
sounds good.
fresh. Look, the essence of metaphors.
Plowing in the dark. Yeah, Levi, that one's got like
slugs
slugs through wet grass.
Simile. The second misstep
God
that a lot of
damn it.
writers make is the purple prose pitfall. PPP. And here's an example of like a way overwritten simile. Her laughter cascaded like crystalline waterfalls through the azure morning. I mean, you're trying to sound super like fancy and smart, but it just comes off in a way like it's kind of annoying. Trying to be fancy ends up distancing the reader rather than making them more invested in your story. What you're really going for when you're writing metaphors or similes is authenticity, is simplicity. So take a look at this example from Raymond Chandler in The Big Sleep. His smile was as stiff as a frozen fish. You can see that chilly, uncertain, awkward.
One of my good ones is like if you're like falling to the ground and like skidding across the ground is like a rock paddling through snow, or like strewn across like a cracked and broken ice sheet or something like that. Or it's like you hit the ground so hard that you shattered the ground, essentially. It's like good ice metaphor there.
Smile on that guy's face. Now that's very simple language. It's not trying to be fancy at all, but it communicates exactly what it needs to be communicating. And by the way, a little side note, I have a list of 100 amazing metaphors and similes that I've collected from my readings over the years.
Displayed across the frozen waste.
So you can go see a whole bunch of more examples. The only trouble is, like, if you read it, you'll end up writing like all of your prose as metaphor and similes. So like you gotta hold yourself back, but you can find some of the most amazing examples if you click on that link. The third mistake that some writers make is the mixed metaphor mess. A mixed metaphor is just when you're combining two very different and somewhat...
We all know this one, and I'm gonna bring it up because we should all know it, and if you don't know it, go know it right after we watch it.
Hey, fuck ass, give me a beer.
Listen, boys. I've got some very bad news. I'm going to have to close down the bar. Well, the Russians are putting up buildings all over the town, including this one. Fuck! Ass! And they're not letting me renew my lease.
Let me talk to my boss. Maybe he can do...
Listen, fellas, I don't want anyone to know, so you keep your trap shut. Well, you know what they say. People in glass houses sink ships.
Hey, Doc, I gotta buy you like a proverb book or something. This mix and match shit's gotta go.
Penny saves we're two in a bush, innit? And don't cross the road if you can't get out of the kitchen.
Oh, good shit, good shit. Oh, man.
Incompatible metaphors. For example, the seeds of his
Reminds me
betrayal.
when Americans say dog eat dog world instead of dog eat dog world. I have never heard anyone say that. Eggy. I could totally believe it. You want to hear a funny thing? I'll give you guys a little bit of personal information here. So, you know Help Me Rhonda by the Beach Boys. Oops. So my sister thought that it was Happy Bunny. It's a dog-eat-dog world when Snoop Dogg's involved, but otherwise. So when it's like, help me, Rhonda, help me get her out of my head. My sister would be like, Happy Bunny, Happy Bunny. And she was like 11 or like 13. That's the cute version. Yeah, exactly, right? But I always thought that was a good one. I've had my moments with that with songs. Fuck, there's half the Iron Maiden songs I listen to. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that lyric is. That one very specific lyric, don't know. And like almost every single song, there's like one or two lyrics where I'm like, I don't know, man.
Bloomed into a thunderstorm.
Finger butthole. Where did that come from, Callie?
Of regret. So we start with a very agrarian farming metaphor with these seeds.
What about Bob Dang? You make my heart sang, you make everything groovy. I don't know. Never heard that one.
Of betrayal. But at the end of the sentence, we're going into thunderstorms, which is a very different type of metaphor. Or take a look at this one. She opened the floodgates of her heart, letting her love take flight. So we start with the aquatic, with floodgates, but then by the end, we're going to a flying metaphor. Those two things don't match. But there's a very easy solution for mixed metaphors. Well, one, you can cut one, right? But the other choice is to do an extended metaphor. So basically one metaphor, and then you just run with it and keep going with that metaphor. Let's look at an example from good old Shakespeare, because why not? All the world's a stage, and all the men and women.
And you know what's really fucked up about this? I don't know about you guys, but who does that look like? This is probably a good one. Like, damn, bro, it's the nose! The nose and the forehead! I got nothing, doesn't look like anyone to me. Like, you don't see it? Like the nose and the forehead. Same with the eyebrows, too. Forehead, you can land an arrow. Son. Yo, William Resurrection. True.
From good old Shakespeare, because why not? All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's like a long face, right? Because he's, like, super tall, and he's super skinny, so he's got, like, a long, gaunt face.
plays many parts. There's 4 different sections of that sentence, and each one is expounding and running with this idea of, oh, the world is a stage. The 4th mistake that some writers make is the metaphor burnout. All right, embarrassing story time. I once got my short story edited by a very famous editor, and when he gave it back to me, he circled all of the metaphors and similes I was using and said, you're using too many. And then he proceeded to like cross off a good number of them as well, and explained next to each one why it was not a good metaphor and simile. And readers, you know what? He was correct. So I had to squelch my pride and be like, okay, that was a good lesson. Thank you. But at the end of my short story, he wrote that a guiding principle should be is don't use too many metaphors. Like use them sparingly. Use them infrequently.
Because they're supposed to be
and that
powerful.
Way, the ones that remain will really stand out and really be highlighted.
Exactly.
So what is the solution? The solution is to cut as many as you can stomach and cut all the ones that are merely okay rather than being incredible. Now, people have asked me like how many metaphors or similes should you have per page? And there's not a good answer for that, but there is definitely too many. Now, can you have too few? Well, I think so. I think part of creative writing is making sure you're using beautiful language and comparing very unlike things to surprise the reader. But guidelines, I mean, really more, you don't want more than a couple per page. And some authors use, a couple per chapter. That's completely fine. In the end, you're looking for reader-oriented metaphors. And by that, I mean, this is a metaphor that helps the reader to understand what is being described, that helps the reader to understand the action that's happening. If it doesn't help them to understand it better, then there's not really a reason for that simile or metaphor. Let's look at a good example, an example you would want to keep from
Raymond Dow! Welcome, brother. How's it going, good
American
sir?
ladies leaning on their canes, listed toward me like towers of Pisa. I can see that perfect tilt of the Leaning Tower of Pisa and how someone leaning on a cane would be tilted that way. It's a wonderful simile. The 5th mistake that some writers make with metaphors and similes is the echo effect. This is when your metaphor or simile is too closely related to the thing that you are describing.
Crap.
And therefore, it's not really helping the reader understand anything. You're just repeating yourself. Here's a great example. The old car
What is
rattled
this?
like a
How did you
machine
get
with
so
loose
many
parts.
points, Jesus?
You don't say.
I'm the 1%
old
now.
car with loose parts.
Never
is
thought we
running
would
like
see
something
that.
with loose parts. I mean, do you understand that sound better? No, of course not. And just so you think I'm not making this up, like this happens in books all the time. And here's some examples from Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. The floor of the cavern was water, like an underground lake. So an underground lake is like an underground lake. Okay, Dan. Oh, here's another one from the Da Vinci Code as well. Her young features hardened with all the detached composure of a seasoned ER doctor dealing with a crisis. And so her features are hardening like a seasoned ER doctor. The comparison is not exactly progressing.
This repetition can also be stylistic.
Let's throw it back to good old Aristotle. Aristotle
literally,
says that the
it
ability
is a rhetoric
to create
resource.
metaphors or similes is the sign of genius, because you're able to compare two things which are dissimilar, right? Those bad examples were not dissimilar enough, and so they're not good metaphors or similes. You have to compare dissimilar things. So let's look at a good example right now from Patricia Hample's Memory and Imagination. She emphasized...
Repetition is fine so long as it's not used too much, IMO. Yeah, I'm a like 3 to 5 person. If I'm using repetition, it's 3 to 5 times. Or I'll use one thing 3 times, one time 5 things, or one thing 5 times, and then another thing 3 times. So like 3, 5, 3.
The importance of middle C, its central position, a sort of north star of sound. I remember thinking middle C is the belly button of the piano. So there we have two great metaphors. What is
Damn,
middle C?
Jesus, why
It
would
is
you do
the
that?
North star of sound, and it is the belly button of the piano.
3
Those
to
are
5
just
unless
brilliant,
it's the
right?
number
I
of
love them,
attempts
and
in
I
a
feel like I
difficult word.
understand the piano more after analogies
I
like
don't
that.
run a marathon, doesn't count if you don't tell anyone. Can you wish me luck, Papa Talks? Jesus, Eggy, good luck, man. I believe in you. You got this, brother. Go, go, go. Pace yourself, good sir.
But I have to say that sometimes this rule is broken, and authors compare very similar things. Let's figure out how to do it well by looking at Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. Galantin cursed them on, taking up a lance and mounting the head upon it, where it bobbed and leered like a carnival head. So here we have
Thanks.
a head,
Don't trust
like an
a
actual
fart
head,
after
compared
15
to
mile
a carnival head.
15.
Those things are not very dissimilar, right? But I think by naming it a carnival head, which is a fake head, he's comparing the real head to a fake head. I mean, I think it actually
Nature
works. It
looks
does
weird
help
with even numbers, lol. When painting birds, you paint 3 or 5 in the air because when there's 2 or 4, it just looks weird to our eyes. Thanks for interesting stream. See you for more hijinks tomorrow. True,
to
Eggy.
get a better
Take care,
vision
buddy.
of what that head looks like. Grody, but sort of grotesque and grody. And here's a second example. There circled 2 black hawks around the sun, slowly and perfectly opposed like paper birds upon a pole. So birds are being compared to birds. So how does he get away with this? Well, I think calling them paper birds upon a pole gives the sense like their movements are very organized and unbreakable. So yes, you can break this rule, but it's a difficult one to break. Just make sure you're doing it well. The 6th mistake that some writers make with metaphors is the wrong moment metaphor. Sometimes you are at an extremely high tension point in a storyline. Maybe it's a chase scene, maybe it's some sort of deep argument between the 2 main characters, and it is interrupted by metaphor or simile. Now there might be nothing wrong with that metaphor or simile. It might be exceptionally beautiful. It might compare 2 very dissimilar things, but it's just coming in the wrong place in the story. There are moments when action scenes need to be action scenes, and you can't slow them down with contemplation or the vista and comparing it to something, because that's not what the reader cares about right now. And here's a fun example for you to see what I mean. As the punch flew toward his face, he thought about how fists were like the seeds of violence, scattered by the winds of anger across the fertile soil of just no, don't do that. It ends up making these very urgent moments feel leisurely, and you don't want that feeling. The 7th mistake that some writers make is the from nowhere metaphor. So remember that a metaphor or simile comes from the point of view, the consciousness or perspective of your main character. And you want to make sure you're not using a metaphor that is completely at odds with their lived experience. And here's just a small example. If you were writing a character who's a chef, what sort of simile might they use? Dating someone new is like tempering chocolate. If you rush it, the whole thing seizes up. So what I like about this is it's not common culinary knowledge. Like, not a lot of people out there have tempered chocolate. You really have to know that process to understand, oh, like if you do the process in a wrong way, like the chocolate seizes up and you're not gonna be able to use it. Did you know chocolate seizes up? I mean, hopefully someone who makes desserts would actually know this. But the comparison to dating is wonderful, right? And it's
One use of repetition that I remembered is from Norm Macdonald's novel Marvin Adelman. He had large black glasses and whiskers, which made him look like a big rodent with big black glasses. He was fast, like a jackrabbit with black glasses. Ah. See, I see what you did there.
It's a comparison that only a chef character could make, or a character who just knows a lot about cooking. You get the point. A second thing that you should remember is that a metaphor comes from the time and place and culture of your book. If you are writing a historical novel in the 1500s, then you don't want to compare something to a pork pie hat because they weren't invented until the 1800s. If you were writing a sci-fi novel on a different planet, then you wouldn't want those people comparing things to an elephant or a fish or something if those animals don't exist on that planet and they don't know anything about Earth. Consider consider what your characters know and only make metaphors and similes that make sense to them. Now, the last point, number 8, is probably the trickiest one, but I think it's really valuable, so I included it. This is the tone-breaking metaphor. Say you have a scene where the tone is very depressed. You don't want to ruin that tone by having a happy metaphor. Yeah?
True.
You with me on this one?
Yeah.
Now let's look at a good example.
Mood is important
Colson
to set.
Whitehead wrote The Underground Railroad. Now check out the tone of the
I think the chapter is on YouTube, read by him, like 8 minutes. Nice.
this paragraph. Everything's scorched, everything's burnt, the whole landscape is just ruined. And so at the end of this paragraph, let's look at what is used as a simile. Chimneys sticking up like grave markers. Okay. Gravestones are a suitably depressing simile for this landscape which has been devastated. If you said something like chimneys sticking up like birthday candles, that would ruin the tone. It would be awful. So now, yes, you do need to pay attention to where the metaphor or simile is in your book so you can make sure it's not breaking the tone. But I also think it's a very useful exercise to isolate all your metaphors and similes. Try taking them out of your manuscript, putting them in a separate file, and sort of, interrogating them, looking at them in the fresh light of a new environment. It's a great exercise to do because it'll help you figure out like which ones of these are my very best ones and which ones are like so-so and I can actually cut. And maybe you want to run them through the 8 mistakes that we've talked about in this video to determine which ones you should cut. Now, the last thing we have to do is talk about 3 excellent ways that you can use metaphors and similes. One is metaphor as humor. Look at this example from Nell Zink, the Wall Creeper. She was young the way an actual young person is young. It's taking our expectations for metaphor.
That's exactly Raymond with that one. Haven 2, I've been watching and chatting for years now, and this has quickly become my favorite stream. Thank you from your viewers, Jack, Edward, Lucy, Kyle, Scott, Sarah. Alright, well thank you very much, Haven 2. I appreciate that, thank you. True, good sir.
She's gonna compare a young person to something, and
I'm
she
glad
just
someone
doesn't
likes
fulfill
it.
them in any way. She's like, she's young the way, a young person is young. Or look at this example from Terry
He's
Pratchett.
wearing glasses like a glasses wearing Jackrabbit as well as a glasses wearing rat. See, it's like when you there are 3 components to humor. The 2 main components are: is it true? Does it hurt someone? If it's true and hurts someone, it's gold. And then there's subversion of expectations. If you subvert expectations, it's funny. You do all 3 of those, best jokes ever made. Best jokes ever made.
Pratchett's Discworld. He compares this city to all sorts of crazy stuff. Old cheese on a hot day, loud as a curse in a cathedral, bright as an oil slick, colorful as a bruise, and as full as a dead dog on a termite mound. Wow! I mean, so over the top, so full of exuberance and life. I mean, I find several of those like just so wacky
Not
and wild.
for
It
who
really
it
tickles my
hurts.
funny bone in a way. A second great way to use metaphors
Kyle
is to
said
use
that.
an anti-metaphor. And the premier example of this, and you guys might have heard this before, is from Douglas Adams.
Well, my thing is, if you can't make fun of yourself, you shouldn't be able to make fun of other people. So I love doing this.
This streamer is a dumb fuck him fuck this stream lol say bitch ass noob nothing hereby.
True!
Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The ships hung in the sky in much the same way that bricks don't. Yes, ships do hang in
Sarah,
the sky in that way.
like Sarah Doman. Oh shit! They've seen that's one thing Ryan commented on too. He was like, "Wait, is that a dragon scimitar?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, that's a fucking dragon scimitar. Why the fuck wouldn't it be a dragon scimitar?"
Way. It's amusing, right? It's sort
Hello,
of an
Ryan.
unusual way to compare things. And lastly,
That's not. I met this random other dude, Haven 2. He came in like the other day, and he was having some fun. Let's just say that. But yeah, I don't know who this Scotty guy is, but I bet he's hot. True, Callie. I don't know who this Callie guy is, but I bet they have abs.
third technique is don't be afraid of the double metaphor.
Wait,
I see
what was the
this
second
all-
one? He always goes so fast. What was the second one? The anti-metaphor. Okay, I missed this. And that's the one. Okay, yeah. That's the one where it's like completely out of place, right? And it's like bricks don't.
Okay. Metaphors is to use the same way that bricks don't.
True.
Yes, ships do hang in the sky in that way. It's amusing, right? It's sort of an unusual way to compare things.
3 months,
lastly,
you'll see
the
real
third
abs.
technique is
Hell yeah, Callie. Do you want to do a challenge to see who can get better abs, you or me? I was talking to a buddy on a public bus, and we were talking about why limitations on childbirth. And he made a comment. That's all fine and dandy till someone gets a wild hair up their butt and starts fucking like jackrabbits, which made the driver burst into laughter. And from then on, we called him Jackrabbit. That's pretty good.
don't be afraid of the double metaphor. I see this all over the place, but I'll just cite 2 quick examples from Roberto Bolaño. This is an author who is about excess. He is not satisfied with a single metaphor or simile. No, he wants.
This is what is basically called tropes and rhetorical forms in literature. You already have better abs. I'm like, I don't know whether I'm at an advantage or disadvantage. Well, you're at an advantage, Callie, because I only do like 20 sit-ups a day. And my abs ain't getting any different than they are, because I've been doing this shit forever. And they're at the point they're going to be at. Ao Bolano, Chili El Major Pays Chili. True, Raymond.
Wants to give you 2 in one fell swoop. He was very tan, like a singer or a Puerto Rican playboy. And then here's another one. Burst out from the corner like someone playing a bad joke or about to attack him. I will say
Well,
that
shit,
if you're
that's a
going to try
big
to pull this
contrast.
off, you should do it often throughout a manuscript. If you just do it once, people are going to be like, why do you need both of those? If you do it throughout, then it becomes a signature style.
That is the part of repetition that makes it extremely important, is not within a small measure, but across the entire story. How do you use these methods? And like what I like to do in my head is almost like create a formula of how I'm going to approach it. Maybe I should do an outline on that, on like a stylistic outline of like word choice, like structure for knowing places in the story where those kinds of beats for poetic language are available, and where areas are that you should just leave as like groups of dialogue or a summary or a like montage, right? Or at least through the chapters. Yeah, exactly. And you can even have that set a tone, like after a certain point in the story, like with Husai, have Husai have this rhetoric about being a hero and being like praised, and then after the fall of Garuda, he wants nothing to do with that. He's like, no, I'm not worthy. And it's like now he's trying to gain that merit of being worthy, as opposed to just trying to permeate that feeling, right? And it completely changes the dynamic of his character. Why does hearing Spanish make me want to learn languages? One trope I really am tired of seeing is truck kun being the method of removing a character from their original world. There's just so many other options. At this point, I'd be happy to see the good old garden rake being the method used.